In a daze, not even realizing what I was doing, I stepped down from the small ladder I had taken out of the closet and trudged back to the bed. When it finally registered, I sat down heavily, staring at what was visible through the open, dangling lid of the smoke detector. All the implications of why and how the object of my intense gaze ended up where it was, and what exactly it meant, flooded my mind. I am not entirely sure when the suspicion took hold in my mind that Veronica, my wife of 3 years, had been cheating on me, but it took hold. Based on my research, she was displaying many of the classic signs of infidelity. The sudden shift from never going on overnight business trips to being away for the entire weekend, like right now, only reinforced the thing that had been making me uneasy for a while. I mean, who goes on a business trip on a Friday afternoon? At least the last short 2-day trip she took was less socially disruptive in the middle of the week. Looking back, it could be said that the suspicions began to rear their ugly heads about a month ago. I returned from my trip and found that Ronnie had suddenly changed. Colder, more emotionally distant than before, and significantly less affectionate. We always had sex after I returned from a trip, but this time she apologized and refused. After that, I tried for a couple more nights, but was turned down. Being the attentive guy that I was, I stopped grumbling, hoping she would come out of whatever horror she was in. I realized that here we were, a month later, and we had not made love since the night before the first trip. Looking at the smoke detector above the bed in our apartment's bedroom, I now knew why. The sudden change in one behavior prompted me to look for other differences. When I opened my eyes, there was no shortage of clues. I noticed that she looked at me when she thought I was busy with something else, and then turned away when I looked at her. Was it just me, or did her "I love you" sound somewhat forced these days? Besides that, many things in her life had changed recently. Starting with the sharp increase in the number of girls' nights out, the sudden change of password on her computer, taking phone calls and then walking out of earshot during the conversation, to the conversations with her best friend Julie in the kitchen, which would abruptly stop when I entered the house. They were all there, and all of them intensified my growing paranoia. Unwilling to accept what I now strongly suspected, I began cataloging when I thought she had the opportunity. I followed her to the next girls' night out and was pleasantly surprised that she was exactly where she was supposed to be and behaved exactly how a wife should behave. In a fit of petty spite, I changed my login password too. If she was going to keep secrets, then damn me if I was going to give her free access to my things. Her actions and attitude affected me. Sometimes I could not guarantee that I would be calm enough to pretend to be normal at home, so I stayed later at the office or went out for drinks with friends. I hated what she had driven me to. For example, I started calling her at work during lunchtime. I hated it even more as a pattern began to form over the course of several weeks. If before she always took only half an hour for lunch, now she was taking an hour or more almost every day. Enough time to have lunch with a lover. Just enough time for a quick sex. Unfortunately, part of my job involved monitoring the reception and phones during the lunch break, so I could never check on Ronnie's workplace to follow her. I suppose I could have taken a day off, but subconsciously I was afraid of what I might discover. I was disappointed that our finances did not stretch far enough to hire a private detective to accompany her on her first overnight business trip 2 weeks ago. I called her at random times, and she always answered quickly and never sounded out of breath, but I knew she was a smart woman. How clever was the item hidden beneath the lid of the smoke detector above the bed? One look at that item, and I immediately understood that not only was she deceiving me, but she was doing everything possible to ensure I would not find out. That day, all my suspicions came together. Wanting to see my wife before she left for the weekend to be with her lover, probably in a futile hope of reminding her that I loved her, I came home a little early, timing it so that she would be home from the office but not yet on her way to the airport. She clearly was not expecting me and came out of the bedroom looking damn guilty. I sat on the bed until she had no choice but to go into the bathroom to finish her makeup. Then I carefully checked the closet and under the bed, nothing. Then I checked that her phone was still protected by an unknown password, and I carefully pulled enough clothing out of the suitcase to confirm that there was no suspicious lingerie or cocktail dresses inside. That puzzled me. When I entered the house, she was definitely up to something in that room. After that, I checked the trunk of her car for any other bags. Nothing, but she is a very smart woman. Instead of easing my fears and weakening the suspicions that my loving wife was doing something dirty behind my back, the lack of evidence only strengthened them. It infuriated me that she had outsmarted me. I came up with a plan to catch her that was within my budget. Next week, I would invent a business trip for myself. Maybe Veronica would take the opportunity and invite her lover over while I was away. I would install a tiny camera in the smoke detector above the bed to record the action. It was only a one-room apartment, so one camera would be enough for me. Once my suspicions were confirmed, I knew exactly what to do to dissolve this mockery of a marriage without subjecting myself to financial abuse. Thus, 3 hours after Veronica left for her second overnight business trip, I pushed the bed aside, pulled our small 3-step household ladder under the centrally located smoke alarm, and released the small clip on the side of the device, causing the lid to open and dangle on its hinge. Inside was the exact same camera as the one I held in my left hand. A camera that transmitted a signal to a small transponder that could be hidden anywhere. A transponder that, in turn, transmitted the signal either to a laptop for live viewing or to a computer for later playback. I knew with certainty that my wife would prefer a combination of both. So, not only had she started an affair, but she had also been monitoring my location and behavior while doing it, to watch for any signs that I suspected her. I got up and walked into the living room. There was another smoke detector, and, of course, another camera. Just to confirm my suspicions beyond a shadow of a doubt, I combed through my car with a fine-toothed comb. It took me 15 minutes to find a tiny GPS tracker. I placed my hands on the hood, my chin on my chest, and I felt sick at the thought that at this very moment my wife was in another city, being had by some unknown stranger. Or was she not? Suddenly, I remembered how abruptly Veronica refused my offers to drop her off at the airport. I raised my head, staring blankly at the garage door as my thoughts raced. Could it be that she never flew anywhere? Maybe she was somewhere in the city right now, filled with her lover's fluid? No, the woman I knew was too smart not to make the guy wear a condom. Too many chances of passing an STD to me that I shook my head, realizing I was getting distracted, putting off the inevitable conversation with myself. Could I forgive my wife for sleeping with someone other than me? Never. Well, there it was, the conversation was over. I was an impatient bastard. The thought of waiting for her return on Sunday evening to confront her face to face was not an option. I needed to find her and end this immediately. Veronica handled all the family finances. I pulled out all the latest bank statements from the closet and looked through them for the past month. Nothing unusual until I reached the line, transferred to account number XYZ, amounting to $500. Logging into NetBank, I connected the listed account number. I looked into the notebook where my wife kept coded passwords, found an unfamiliar one, then guessed the code on the third try. It was a credit card whose existence I had not known about. The last transaction was less than 3 hours old. At a cheap chain motel 10 minutes away by car, for some reason, the realization that she was paying the bill for her date with her lover made me angry. The realization that she was essentially stealing our money to do it made me furious. Next came a charge from the same motel, which coincided with her first supposed out-of-town trip. Even higher up, a record made when she bought the surveillance equipment. Ironically, she bought it at the same store where I had bought mine. A quick glance at the statement showed she made the purchase 3 days after I returned from my last trip. So, she most likely met that bastard while I was away. That made sense. I knew that if I went there in my current state of mind, I might kill someone, so I sat down and took a few deep breaths. Time to think. Did Veronica know that I had found her cameras? Did she have a laptop that constantly received footage while she lay on her back, being pounded by whoever he was? Unlikely. I could not imagine her being that heartless. After all, I knew that one of the reasons that had driven her to take such extraordinary measures to keep me from finding out about her affair was the desire to spare me the pain. That had to be it, otherwise, she was far from the loving person I believed her to be. It was more likely that she was recording footage from the camera. Returning to my car, I wrote down the GPS tracker's data and Googled it. Sure enough, it had a software feature that could send a signal to a mobile phone when the device was in motion. So there was no need to burden her lover's conscience, or her own, by constantly having the feed from our home on the screen. All she had to do was listen for the alert signal. Sneaky bitch. Then my thoughts returned to what I had done or failed to do to keep her faithful to me. All the usual reasons that I suppose everyone in my position thinks about flashed through my head. Was I small? Was I unsatisfying in bed? I did not think so. Until she rejected me, I believed she completely enjoyed my efforts. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I really was crap in bed, and she had been pretending the whole time. God, was I doubting my own manhood? All those thoughts only made me angrier, not calmer, so I turned my mind to possible scenarios. What was she doing right now? And what if I was wrong? What would she do if she had already seen me discover her camera? Throw her guy out of their love nest? Speed up their plans to dump me, rob me, and ride off into the sunset with him? Or was she just sitting there, with him or without him, thinking of a convincing reason why she had to keep me under surveillance? Assuming she was watching the cameras, did she have any reason to suspect that I knew where she was? Looking around, I assessed the wide-angle view of the living room. I figured she could see me sitting on the couch, but probably could not see me digging through the filing cabinet or working at the desk in the corner. She would have noticed frantic activity, but would have no idea what it was about. For a rather vindictive reason, shortening their or her planning time, and for no other, I decided to confront her now. Whether out of anger or not on my part, I do not know. Relying on the assumption that there was no camera in the kitchen, I went in there and exited the house through the kitchen door. Opening the side door of the garage, I removed the tracker and placed it on the shelf next to the car, assuming it was not sensitive enough to detect such a small movement. Driving up to the cheap motel on the outskirts of town, I parked a little farther away. Walking through the darkness, I found her car hidden behind the main building, invisible from the highway. There were only 4 cars in the parking lot, and none within 5 spaces of hers. The room directly in front of her car was also the only one with the lights still on. Glancing around for witnesses before sneaking up to the window, I checked to see if there was a view into the room. There was not. Bracing my ego for whatever I might discover, I raised my hand, clenched my fist, and prepared to knock. Before my knuckles could touch the wood, I saw the headlights of a car coming around the corner. Thinking it might be her lover, I stepped away from the door, pretending to be looking for my room. A small car with the name of a local pizzeria on it stopped next to my wife's car. I lazily thought she was having a late dinner, but then I remembered that on Friday night in this town, you could wait up to 3 hours for a pizza delivery. A teenager got out of the car, took a pizza box and a bottle of soft drink from the back seat, and knocked on the door. Veronica opened it, dressed exactly the same as when she had left our house, handed over some cash, and then accepted the items. From the shadows, I watched as the delivery boy returned to his car. My wife left the door open as she carried the pizza in one hand and the drink in the other, to place them next to the bed. Once her hands were free, she turned back toward the door to close it. She gasped when she saw me in the doorway, then her gaze darted back to the bed. Slightly embarrassed by the obvious signs of tears on her face, I let my eyes scan the rest of the room. The bed was rumpled, but only in the way it would be if someone had lain on top of the blanket. Her laptop was open on the bedside table, the screen split, one side showing our living room, the other showing our bedroom. Without saying a word, I walked into the room. Entering the bathroom, I checked to see that it was empty, only her toiletries were lying on the sink. Returning to the main room, I looked into the closet, empty, then dropped to my knees to look under the bed, nothing. That exhausted all the hiding places in the tiny motel room. I flopped down on the hard office chair that stood beneath the tiny table. So, I had been right. She had seen me open her cameras, told her lover to leave, and cried when she realized her date was ruined. That was good news, was it not? Of course, it meant that she regretted what she had done to me, to us. I sat and watched as tears streamed down her face again. Did she regret that the discovery of her date had caused me pain? With a hardened heart, I realized that the reason for the tears did not matter. We were irreparably broken. Staring at her, I simply asked, "Where is he?" In my view, at that moment, there was only one motivation for that question. I wanted to know why she considered it acceptable to lie to me and arrange to meet with another guy behind my back. That is why her answer confused me. Eventually, I realized that she was answering a different question, one I had not asked. Why had she been spying on me? I am so sorry, John. I had to know. What the hell are you talking about, Veronica? When you came back from that trip about a month ago, you were different, calmer, more distant. As if something was on your mind. I thought you had cheated on me while you were away. Then you suddenly started working late and supposedly going out with friends. When I saw that you had changed the password on your computer, I was already convinced. I know that I changed my password before that. I did not want you to see that I had been researching signs of a cheating husband. I deleted the search history, but you know more about computers than I do. I did not know if you could still see what I had been looking at. When you first returned, I just could not imagine having sex with you, thinking that you had been with another woman. Then I decided that I could use sex as a test. If you were not getting it from me, then you must have been getting it somewhere else. You only asked me a couple of times for some, and then you gave up. We had never gone that long without it before. Then you started calling me 3 or 4 times during my lunch break to make sure I was there and not spying on you so you could peacefully meet with your lover. My work phone records all missed calls. I started taking longer lunch breaks and checking to see if your car was at work. Julie has been giving me advice this whole time. One time you almost caught us talking in the kitchen, remember? By the way, she thinks I am just being paranoid. What eats at me is that I do not know for sure. This evening, when you came home early and almost caught me changing the battery in the bedroom camera, I thought I would faint from the stress. I was convinced that you were cheating on me, but I needed proof. I bought the cameras and the GPS tracker to get that proof and resolve my dilemma. I still do not know for certain. I know you were just sitting at home alone when I went on that first trip, but I thought that was only because it was during the week. I planned to leave for a weekend so you would have more time. Please, whether you are having an affair or not, could you just tell me? The uncertainty is killing me. I looked at her suffering, tormented face, my mind in absolute turmoil as I watched her agony. My self-image as an honest man had completely misled me into believing there was only one explanation for the clues I had been given. The thought that those same clues could be explained by my wife believing that I was cheating on her could not penetrate even the edge of my consciousness. The pain reflected on her face, more than words, convinced me that she was telling the truth. I had been so devastated thinking she was betraying me that I had missed all the signs that she thought I was doing something dirty to her. My mind was suddenly filled with sympathy for her. I remembered the horror and self-doubt I had experienced when imagining her in the arms of another man. She had been going through the exact same torture. Enough to lie and create a situation where I might meet with my lover, so she could put an end to it. I realized that the looks I had interpreted as guilt were, in fact, silent evaluations of my trustworthiness. Her detachment, a result of the pain she felt from what she believed was my betrayal. No wonder there had not been a single sincere verbal confirmation of her love in the past month. How could she say words of love to someone she suspected of stabbing her in the back? It became clear to me that I had only glimpsed the pain she had been enduring for a month. Suddenly, a terrible thought occurred to me. Do you think Dave and Allison felt the same way? What? What do Dave and Allison have to do with this? Do you think your ex-husband and my ex-wife felt the pain, fear, and doubt like we do, when she caught us in bed and told him? No wonder neither of them ever considered forgiving us. They were too devastated. From the renewed expression of horror on Veronica's face, I realized that the full weight of how we had hurt our former spouses, the people we supposedly loved, had crashed down on her. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed back onto the bed. Epilogue. 2 weeks later, we began negotiating how to separate with minimal fuss, given how easily she believed I was capable of betraying her, and vice versa. It was clear that we both had serious trust issues. She was a deceiver, as was I, in a relationship born of deception. No amount of sugarcoating could hide the fact that our relationship had been doomed from the start. Most people judge others by their own standards, so each of us suspected, worse, knew, that the other was capable of betrayal. We parted as friends and even occasionally satisfied each other's sexual desires. When her biological window was nearly closed, Veronica actually approached me a couple of years later, asking if, since she had failed to find a new partner, I would agree to father her child, without any legal obligations. I thought it was too strange and declined. Since then, I have not trusted her enough to have sex with her without a condom. A couple of years later, we drifted apart. The last I heard of her, she was still single, just like me. I am glad we enjoyed sex when we were together, still married to other people, because now we are definitely paying for it. That concludes the lesson.